I'm not joking when I say I think this is one of the most important and useful podcasts in the last 150 podcasts. I know this is a really common challenge.
I think this is magical. I mean, this is like the most important, arguably the most important aspect of my development as an exercise professional. We realized this years ago. Our trainers are not good at giving positive, specific feedback. They were just narrating. They were narrating what was going on rather than you did this well, keep it up, right? Talk about what actually someone actually did well. If someone does something poorly and you're facilitating all of this, you have to call it out. Because if you don't call it out, everyone watching thinks, oh, that's what excellence looks like. Everybody needs to see that. If you let someone do it wrong and you say, okay, great, let's move on to the next role play, everyone watching says, oh, that's what it's supposed to look like. Okay, that's the standard from here on out. You got to call out poor role plays and say, do it again in front of everybody.
Lawrence Neal here, and welcome back to High Intensity Business, your one-stop shop for growing your hit business and fueling your passion for high-intensity training. This is episode 504, and today I welcome back Discover Strength CEO Luke Carlson, who returns to the podcast to talk about how to find, coach, and sustain the it factor in your trainers. So the reason we're doing this podcast today is I had a really great mastermind recently in high-intensity business. And one of the members had this challenge around, cultivating the it factor, this kind of intangible characteristic in their trainers, right? Because obviously, Luke, you and I, we recently did a podcast on the workout as the marketing and breaking down all the elements that go into a great workout experience that help to retain the customer and get referrals. And so during this mastermind, the challenge was really trying to cultivate that in the team, because I think as entrepreneurs, as founders, we're really passionate. And it's not to say that trainers aren't as passionate, but it's sometimes a challenge, I think, to try and coach that, cultivate that, recruit that, and then also sustain it over the long term. And obviously, it's everything. If you're going to grow a business with trainers, you have to have trainers that channel that passion and that show the client every session without fail that they care more about that client's workout, that client's form, that client's rep, that client's results more than they do. And I think there's no better person to talk about this than you. So where do we start? What do you think is the step one for really trying to nail this in the business?
Yeah, I think maybe for clarity's sake, we should, first of all, thanks for having me, Lawrence. For clarity's sake, let's not talk about how do we actually find or hire this person, because I think that's beyond the scope of our conversation. Let's
Sure.
assume we've hired the person. And clearly, when we hired the person, we hired what we thought was definitely the right person, and we put him in the right seat. And now, whoever we hired, how do we bring out that it factor in them? And so maybe our working definition of it factor, of course, we're calling it the it factor because we don't have a good working definition of it, but it factor is that trainer who naturally just has it on the floor. They're a wonderful communicator. They understand high intensity, the application of high intensity training principles. They know how to get the most out of a client. The client says, how long has that guy been doing this? That gal been doing this? They really, man, they're really dialed into my specific workout. We've all worked with someone who kind of has it, and we've worked with people who don't have it, right? So that's kind of our working definition of it factor. How do we cultivate it, right? Is I think the framing question. And so for me, when we think about the it factor, we have to think about it in these amorphous kind of descriptors that we give to human beings. Like we say, hey, Lawrence, that guy is such a wonderful communicator. And we say, well, did he come out of the womb that way? What is it about Lawrence that makes him a great communicator? Well, what you find is it's just a host or a compilation of behaviors. So we can actually look at each one of the behaviors that makes a great communicator a great communicator. Oh, okay. This individual always makes eye contact. When someone's speaking with them, they're always locked in and making eye contact. Well, the great communicator is also shaking their head yes the whole time the person's talking, right? That makes a great communicator. The person responds when you're telling an element of your story by saying, okay, tell me more about that. They don't cut you off. They don't finish the sentence. They don't say, when you're telling me that you went on a vacation to London, I don't say, well, I've been to London also right away and turn it about me. I make it more about you and ask you follow-up questions. So those are some of the, three of the behaviors that probably make a great communicator. So what we should do is we should spend all of our time training on the behaviors. And so if we're talking about the it factor, we should try to break down the behaviors that are involved in this kind of it factor quality and then train on those behaviors. And of course, some people will pick this up so much faster. Some people that it does seem to be genetically encoded. But regardless of where you're at, we can train all of these behaviors. And suddenly that person who is a poor communicator is a wonderful communicator. And it's not that there was one gene that changed, right? That this is a great communicator or it's a poor communicator. We just focused on all the different behaviors and they became a great communicator. So from an it factor standpoint, let's talk about the different categories that we probably need to address. So one of them would be, is it okay if we jump into those categories, Lawrence?
Please do. This is great.
So I think we think about the different elements of the workout, and for me, one of them is feedback. So someone that it has the it factor, they're able to give appropriate feedback that adds value in the workout. And I've had really good high intensity training workouts where there was literally no feedback. I mean, literally all of the coaching that was given was push, push harder, push, good, push. And that was literally it for a full 30 minutes. Okay, so there was not very valuable feedback. Now, that's not the only element of the workout. The intensity level of that workout was high. The equipment was really good. And so there was other elements that made it a solid workout, but there was no feedback. So then you go into the behaviors, the specific things that you'd want to see around feedback. Okay, well, let's have some positive, specific feedback. So it's one thing to be positive. It's another thing to actually be specific. So if someone does something well, reinforce it. We know this is how you train a human being. This is how you train a whale, right? You give them positive feedback. And to train a whale, I think most people understand this concept. How do you get this orca whale, orca shark? Okay, orca shark, a
No, you're
whale.
right. What? It's a word. No.
I think I'm not sure. We're going to find out whether or not it's a shark or a
Could have just said a dog. It made it easier.
yeah. So, but let's just picture this orca, fish or whale, jumping out of the tank at SeaWorld, literally 10, 20 feet up into the air out of the water. How do you get the orca to do that? Well, of course, they take a massive ring and have it in the very bottom of the tank. And they have a little food, a little treat on one side of the ring. And every time the orca goes through the ring, it knows it gets a treat. And you do that over and over and over and over. That's positive, specific feedback. And then you raise that ring 12 inches and another 12 inches and another 12 inches. And pretty soon the ring is right at the surface level of the water. And then you bring it 1 foot out of the water. So the orca realizes if I just lift up out of the water a little bit and get through that ring, I'm going to get a treat. And of course, over time, you keep bringing that ring higher and higher. And the orca can execute this amazing feat of, leaping 10 feet out of the water. Why? Because it just received positive feedback over a desirable action. So no different with working with a human being. So we just want to give positive, specific feedback throughout the workout. That's one small behavior that creates really great feedback. The more specific we are, the better, right? So don't just say, hey, that was a great rep. Talk about what about the rep was good. Now, of course, all of this is going to be nuanced to the stage of the client. If I'm training a client that's literally been a client for 19 years, has been through an amazing workout, maybe the specificity that I give, maybe it doesn't have to be as specific. If I'm training Lawrence, I might say, right now, your rep quality is perfect. Don't change a thing. Okay. I don't need to say, hey, you're doing a good job of pausing, because Lawrence just knows what the pause is going to look like maybe at that point. So you get to decide how specific you need to be on this positive feedback.
But just on that, just to give give more color to this. If people want to see this actually in action, go to the show notes to this on highintensitybusiness.com, episode 504, and I will link up my virtual workout with Luke. And even though I am an experienced trainee and I do know the good elements of form, there are so many instances where you demonstrate positive specific feedback and corrective specific feedback that I think will really help people with more advanced trainees, or any trainee for that matter.
Yeah. And let me give you a side note on that is I love to give a lot of positive specific feedback. And I'll often have clients comment that working with me, it's just like a rush of positivity for 30 minutes. And that's interesting because I don't think I'm overly like a crazy positive person, right? I don't think my close, leadership team members would say Luke is just overly positive all the time. But I do think it's the best way to take someone through a workout. Whatever they're doing well that you want the client to continue to do, reinforce that behavior. And it's no different than being in a relationship, right? You cannot tell your spouse, I love them. And, years go by and your spouse says, well, you never tell me you love me. And your response is, well, I told you I loved you the day we got married. If anything changes, I'll let you know. Right. And we have so many high intensity training practitioners that treat the client that way. They said, no, I just call out deviations from good form. And I don't think we do well as human beings when we're only told, I'll tell you if I don't love you anymore. Right. I need to be told that you love me. So in our context, that's positive specific feedback. And it doesn't just need to be around
Yeah.
form. It can be around things like intensity, right? So I love to give a client feedback around their intensity. I know at rep 10, rep 11, I'm like witnessing how much they're grinding, how uncomfortable they are. So I love to give feedback around how wonderful their effort is in that moment, or even how fast they're moving between exercises, something of that nature. And then we want to give constructive, specific feedback. So when something needs to change, let them know what it is. And then as soon as they make that correction, give some feedback that they're now doing it correctly, right? So all of this is just feedback. So when we talk about the it factor, the person just knows how to give feedback. Well, what are the behaviors there? It's positive specific, it's constructive specific feedback. Okay. Now, another element here is clarity in the coaching, right? So it factor trainer, a high it factor trainer really says before the session, before the exercise starts, what they expect. Hey, our goal on this one is 5 reps. We're going to use a 10-10 cadence. We're going to lift for 10 seconds. We're going to lower for 10 seconds. Last time here, you got 4 reps. And then maybe one other piece of counsel that's going to help them perform that exercise a little bit better. And if you train the client a million times, it's what they normally do when form breaks down. Let them be aware of that. So for me, if it's leg press, 10-10 leg press, imagine strength leg press, it's going to be, and now Luke, just be aware on rep 3 and 4, your right knee generally caves in. I want to see that knee stay as neutral as possible throughout the entire range of motion. Got it. Okay. Just a little piece of feedback to me. Right. And if it's a brand new client, we can give feedback 10-10 leg press. That feedback might be, and I really want you to nail the pacing. I don't want you to spend more time in the top of the range of motion. Let's make sure the 10 seconds is evenly paced and then the set actually starts. So this is coaching. Are we setting the stage for each exercise that we're doing in terms of how many reps are we targeting? What did we do last time? How do we want the reps performed, et cetera? Now let's continue that coaching. We get into the set, giving the client an idea of what to expect toward the end of the set. And I'm doing, let's say, 8 to 12 repetitions at kind of a standard repetition cadence, 2 seconds up, 4 seconds down. So the habit of letting a client know what's going to happen when they fail. And you don't have to let them know 8 reps ahead of time. But if I'm starting to fail and I'm struggling on the concentric, as a trainer, I can say, continue to struggle, continue to drive. When you're totally stuck, I'm going to help you. I'm just going to barely help you. I want you to do 90% of it yourself. And then I do that. They get stuck. I help 90%. I still want you to control down for 4 seconds. We're going to do 4 more reps just like that, where I help you as little as possible. Now I know what to expect. 4 assisted reps where I'm responsible for doing as much as I can as the trainee on the concentric. Or just saying, Lawrence, I want you to struggle as much as possible on this final rep. Once you get to the top, I'm going to start the stopwatch. You're going to lower for 30 seconds. I'll give you 5-second updates, and then we're done. So just a little bit of communication of what's going to happen at the end. So that's
So sorry, just to clarify, that might happen mid-set, that type of
no,
specific
that's going
example?
to happen probably right at the point of failure
Yeah.
or shy of failure. I don't think it has to happen too early on. Sometimes we not sometimes, we often distract a client by telling them what's going to happen at the end of the set when they're on like their 3rd rep, right? And the other thing is I think you have to kind of read where the client's at to decide what you're going to do at the end of the set, which is a key part of this it factor. We'll get into that in just a little bit. And so what I've had happen so many times is a trainer is having me do 4 forced reps. And after the 4th forced rep, I'm coming down on a 4-second count and they just say, good. And I start pushing again. They're like, oh, no, you're done. And I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me I was done? I had no idea if we were doing 5 more.
God, I hate that.
30-second hold. Was I going to do another one? Like, let me know when we're done. Like, let me know where we're at. So that is coaching later in the set. What do I expect in later set? Why is all important? I think it maximizes the intensity and the compliance that we're going to get from the client if there's just really clear direction. And the reason I think it needs to be so insanely clear at the end of the set is our trainee is uncomfortable. They're breathing hard. As much as we're not supposed to, they may be grunting, right? So I am a bad grunter. Like I make noise when I train. And if the trainer is giving me direction on what we're going to do and they're whispering it and they're telling me what to do while I'm in the middle of a grunt. I didn't hear any of it. I got to have clarity. Like, what are we doing right now? I'm working as hard as I can and I'm trying to appease you. Tell me what I need to do to appease you. And ultimately, when a training session is going really well, the client does feel like they're trying to appease the trainer, right? That is a it factor quality of a trainer. If the trainee just feels like, I want to appease you. Okay. So those are some elements in terms of coaching.
Yeah.
Elements in terms of
Right.
communication, I think we can try to behavioralize is are we using a language that the client can understand, right? Are we using a tone that matches where we are in the set? I love a conversational tone early on during the set. And if we're going to have a little bit of an influx or an increase in the volume of our vocal tone, that should maybe occur at the end of the set. Now, this is all going to be based on the client that we're working with. Some clients respond better to where we have a little bit more of a commanding tone or demeanor, and other clients want it to be conversational. But I think we need the range as an it factor trainer to be able to go there. The best practice from a behavioral standpoint, because that's what we're really talking about, is how do we make these behavioral, is just be conversational at the beginning of the set. And as the set starts to intensify, we can be just a little bit more succinct in our communication. And we can also be just a little bit more enthusiastic or passionate about what the trainee is actually doing, right? Early on in the set, on the second rep, if I'm doing a cartwheel and shouting, great pause, the trainee is going to be totally confused. Like, what? I did a pause in the second rep. That's kind of a normal thing. Your reaction as a trainer didn't match what I was doing. But if it's the very end of the set and I'm on my 19th rep of leg press and you thought I was done at 18 and I somehow managed an unbelievable transition on the 19th rep and somehow grinded through that 19th rep. And by the way, we just pre-exhausted on a leg extension, the trainer can be a little bit more enthusiastic about how great that transition was, like reinforce the heck out of that. So use the vocal tone that matches where you are during the set.
Today's episode is sponsored by Imagine Strength, the game changer in safe, simple, and effective high-intensity training machines. When it comes to HIIT, Imagine Strength is your go-to for intelligently designed, efficient, and affordable equipment. Their team is passionate about HIIT, and it shows in every piece they craft. So why are Imagine Strength the right choice? Number one, they tailor-make their equipment for HIIT studios. Number two, they provide cost-effective solutions for your business. And number three, they are committed to ongoing innovation and refinement. Ready to take your HIIT business to the next level? Visit imaginestrength.com to discuss your needs and find the perfect gear for your studio. Join the HIIT revolution of Imagine Strength and transform your workout experience today.
Now, all of this, I'm just going to zoom out, comes naturally to a trainer that has this it factor, but we don't all have it. And so let's just teach the behaviors. Let's just focus on the behaviors. Let's be cognizant of the behaviors ourselves, even if we think we have that it factor. So that's one of them. Now, Lawrence, let me just pause there. Do you want to go deeper on any of these, or should we move on to another
Well,
topic?
obviously, I think what is really important to cover is, and this is fantastic, by the way, it is how do we train these behaviors in our team, right? Like tactically. And so as
Yeah.
long as we can get there very soon, that'd be.
Let's jump to the tactic right now. I think the most important tactic is get trained by your trainer and train your trainer. What I've realized is if you don't have a manual, if you don't have a learning management system, course of the series of videos that people watch to learn all of this, if you just train the trainer and the trainer trains you, they will learn it. Now, when you're training the trainer, you're modeling all of this. When the trainer is training you, you can just give them feedback about all of this. So I was in our Chicago location 2 days ago. And I got put through a workout by one of our new exercise physiologists, and they took me through the workout. And at the end of every set, I just gave a little feedback. I said, I loved how you barely helped me on all of your assisted reps. And by the way you communicated at the end of that set, it wasn't clear what I was supposed to do at all. Here's how I think you could do it a little bit better. So train with your trainer, train them, have them train you, and give feedback as well. And even as you're training them, when you're done with that set, say, hey, here's why I did it like that. So they can start to internalize it. But even if you don't make it that explicit, they usually pick up on that. And all of your listeners have heard this before. I've heard this so many times in the last 19 years. I'll have a client approach me and say, hey, this new trainer that I'm working with, they do it just like you. They're like a mini Luke, right? And of course, we're not trying to make mini Lukes. We're just trying to have behaviors that are as consistent as possible. And we can largely teach those behaviors a great way to teach those behaviors is training the trainer, having the trainer train you. Another way is just role playing. And let me just give you a best practice for role playing. When someone practices something in front of you, and this applies to all role playing, this could be role playing your free introductory workouts, right? The sales process, or it could be any element of how we're coaching a rep. If I'm role playing with you, as you're doing it in front of me, Lawrence, and you're doing it well, I should be looking at you and shaking my head yes and saying, do it again, right? Do it again. Just like that, do it again. Just like that, do it again. I want you to have 5 to 10 reps in a row of doing it right, where I'm looking at you shaking my head yes. And if you're not doing it well, I'm going to say, try it like this. And then in real time, have you try it like that. And then as soon as you do it well, I'm shaking my head yes. This role playing is so incredibly powerful. This should be a go-to mechanism to up skill the trainers in all of our businesses, is just dedicated time every week for role playing. And I know I've said this on the podcast so many times that listeners are probably sick of it, but for 19 years, we've role played how to professionally greet somebody, how to shake their hand. We're just going to do it over and over and over and over. You'll just never see on the floor, which you actually haven't role played in a role playing session. For us, we just put role playing in the beginning of our meetings. So we know that meeting is going to be largely role playing, but that's true of any type of training. It could be sales training. It could be the behaviors we're talking about on the actual exercise floor. So my go-tos there are train the trainer, have the trainer train you, and then dedicate role-playing sessions to all of this.
Amazing. 2 questions on the getting trained by a trainer and training the trainer. How frequent do you recommend that happens? And a question on the feedback after each set. Is there a issue with providing too much feedback, too much constructive as well?
Yeah, there is, based on where that trainee is in their development. So let me tell you, when we onboard new exercise physiologists, early on in their first few days of employment, after they've been through what we call essentials, where they learn how to do a repetition and they learn all of that, then we have all of our staff come in for workouts with this new exercise physiologist. So I'm on my 3rd day of employment or 4th day of employment, and I might train like 6 one-on-one sessions with trainers. And we specifically ask the trainer, save your feedback for the end of the workout and try to just give 3 pieces of feedback. And even though that's our guideline, all of our trainers just just vomit feedback at this person. They give them 22 things they could do better. And let me tell you, that new trainer internalizes none of it. So I'll go through a workout with a new trainer. This happened 2 weeks ago, and it's a brand new trainer. It's literally their 3rd or 4th day. And they did like 112 things wrong in that workout. And I said, here's the 3 things I think you should focus on. Just obsess around these 3 things. And then they have clarity on what they need to focus on. The workout I went through on Monday, 2 days ago, this trainer has been around for a couple weeks. They're 2.5 weeks in. So I can give them a little bit more nuance at the end of each set. So just purely base it on where they are in their development. We make the mistake of overwhelming someone early on just because we know so much. And when I say we, I'm talking about Discover Strength, but I'm sure your listeners do the same thing. Like you're just a high intensity training Jedi, and you're going to be tempted to just overshare, try to share less early on and just have more clarity. And then as they become more experienced, you can be more nuanced and give more constructive. I still think you got to give the positive as well. Like I love getting done with a set and saying, wow, you just gave me 5 assisted reps on that exercise. You did a wonderful job of barely helping me. So often a new trainer helps too much on the concentric. You did a great job of not doing that. But then what would my constructive feedback look like there? It might be, hey, when I'm doing chest press and I'm at the point of failure, don't start helping me right away. I can probably get the first 2 to 4 inches. Let me get the first 2 to 4 inches and then merge in and start to help me. Okay. So those are some examples of what that might look like.
And how much frequency on the being trained and training the trainer, in your
So
opinion?
to me, it's every workout that you're going to do. So if I have a high intensity training studio and I'm the owner and I have one trainer working for me, we're both going to lift weights twice a week. I'm going to train you twice a week. You're going to train me twice a week. And let me tell you, I think this is magical. I mean, this is like arguably the most important aspect of my development as an exercise professional comes from Steve Ritz, who you've had on the show a million years ago. So he had worked for the Minnesota Vikings. He left the Minnesota Vikings NFL football team and opened up a training studio. This is 1998. There was no such thing as a training studio. And I was his first employee. And he said, well, you're going to train me and I'm going to train you. And he trained me twice a week. And I trained him twice a week. And we never missed those workouts. He was Monday, Thursday. His workout was always going to be 11 o'clock. It was the most important thing on earth. And that's where he did almost all of his teaching to me. Like I learned everything that I knew because he taught it to me as I trained him, and then he trained me, and we never missed. And I made the mistake once. I was a college student. I said, "Hey, I have like a stomach bug. I don't ever get sick. I've thrown up like 5 times in my life. I am sick right now." He said, "Well, I don't mind. You can just throw up in the garbage can while you train me." I thought, okay, all right, I guess we're doing it. So he communicated to me early on, well, like that's the most important thing. And that's become a part of my DNA. And I don't know how you run a high intensity training business unless you are training the trainers that you work with and they're training you as well.
Great. And okay, so you talked about training, being trained, and training the trainer, and then using that as an opportunity to give feedback and discuss the workout, role playing all of the elements. I'd love to finish on more specifics around role playing. This is something when when I was running Optimus Strength, I struggle with a little bit in terms of how do we actually do the role playing? Like, okay, I'm trying to teach someone what a smooth transition is on the Medx torso arm. Am I doing that 20 times? Are we faking the workout? You know what I mean? So do you mind just
Yeah.
elaborating on what that looks like in practice? To maybe give a
Yeah.
few examples. Yeah.
The first rule is you have to commit to taking the role playing incredibly seriously. Like we're not acting, we're actually doing. So I always start off every role play by saying, do not do it, okay, to appease me in this role play. Do it like you're going to do it on the floor. So like you have to know thyself. Don't say something in this role play that you're never going to say on the floor because you think it checks a box. You got to be you, and you have to understand we're not acting, we're actually doing this, which probably is good acting, right? Like I don't know if that's called method acting or what it is, but you got to actually put yourself in that scenario. So that's the starting point. The second point here is what we'll do is we'll have a group of trainers around one person. So I say, who's our volunteer? Who's our trainer? Who's our trainee? The rule of the trainee is you have to be a wonderful actor, because if we're faking muscle failure, you got to fake it realistically. And so I want you to go like into the scene. You are faking muscle failure. Like you cannot deviate from that at all for the role play to be effective. Okay. Now that's only if it actually involves getting the failure. Sometimes you don't have to get failure. A lot of times we have to give feedback, positive or constructive. Well, you can only give constructive feedback if they're not doing something right. So we need a break in form. So we'll often have like 10 trainers around a Medx overhead press, and the client's doing the role play around overhead press. So we have a trainer act as the trainee on the overhead press. Well, we need them to break form a little bit. Well, break form in a realistic way. Do what a client's actually going to do so the trainer can catch it and give reinforcement on it, right? Don't suddenly power clean the weights, and that's going to be silly, right? So try to break form in a realistic way and then have that trainer provide the feedback. What I've realized is you can surface so much in these role plays. So when we talk about positive specific feedback, we realized this years ago. Our trainers are not good at giving positive specific feedback. They were just narrating. They were narrating what was going on rather than you did this well, keep it up, right? Talk about what actually someone actually did well. So I think the most important element of a group role play, and group is literally over 2 people. So in this case, we have trainer, trainee, and then we had like 10 trainers watching. And sometimes we'll do it with 25 trainers watching, is if someone does something poorly and you're facilitating all of this, you have to call it out. Because if you don't call it out, everyone watching thinks, oh, that's what excellence looks like. So even if it's a good trainer and you don't want to undermine kind of their authority or undermine their confidence, you have to say, whoa, Maria, that wasn't good. I don't think that was very specific. I think you're just narrating. Do it again. Everybody needs to see that. If you let someone do it wrong and you say, okay, great, let's move on to the next role play, everyone watching says, oh, that's what it's supposed to look like. Okay, that's the standard from here on out. You got to call out 4 role plays and say, do it again in front of everybody.
Wow. Can I get a job at Discover Strength?
All right, so if you make the move to the US, of course, we would love to have you.
Luke, this has been amazing. I'm not joking when I say I think this is one of the most important and useful podcasts in the last 150 podcasts. I know this is a really common challenge. We were on the mastermind and we are talking about this it factor is so amorphous, and I was struggling to help people define it and point to the resources and kind of talk about it. But you broke it down so simply. It's just a combination of behaviors, identifying all the behaviors, which you've done so well in this podcast, and then teaching the listeners exactly how to practice it and get better and do that across all their team. And the reality is that everyone can learn this stuff. It just takes people a different amount of time to do so, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And, I will just say that If you want a summary, I know people are really enjoying our emails lately where we're breaking down some of these podcasts and into summaries. We'll do the same for this one. So if you want to make sure you get that, please go to school.com/HIB. That's high intensity business. School spelled the cool way, SKOL. You'll also get free access to community, courses, coaching to help with your hit business, but you'll get the summary for this. Luke, thank you so much again. Best way to reach you is discoverstrength.com or luke@discoverstrength.com if you're still doing email, and discoverstrengthfranchise.com, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you for your time. And lastly, to get all the show notes for this podcast, please go to highintensitybusiness.com, search for episode 504, and thank you very much for listening. This episode is brought to you by Imagine Strength, your go-to for safe, simple, and effective high-intensity training equipment. Growing a successful high-intensity training business requires workout equipment that's not only high quality, but also intelligently designed to fit the unique needs of your studio. And that's where Imagine Strength comes in. Drawing on the wisdom of the legendary Arthur Jones, Imagine Strength has crafted a groundbreaking line of fitness equipment that's as affordable as it is efficient, giving your studio the upgrade it needs without breaking the bank. The team at Imagine Strength breathes HIIT. Their passion for high-intensity training shines through in their designs, which they've consistently refined and innovated for optimum effectiveness and user experience. From my personal experience at Rec, I can attest to the careful consideration and craftsmanship that goes into every single piece. My Imagine Strength workout was absolutely brutal, in a good way, of course. Now, what makes Imagine Strength truly stand out? They have innovative equipment tailored for the unique needs of HIIT studios, affordable and efficient designs, lowering the barriers to entry for a HIIT business, continuous innovation and refinement ensuring your studio stays ahead of the curve. Founder Jeff Turner and his team are dedicated to moving the HIIT industry forward and making strength training accessible to more people than ever before. Here's how you get started. Number 1, visit imaginestrength.com. Number 2, discuss your specific needs with the team. And number 3, select the equipment that will propel your business to the next level. Head to imaginestrength.com today and give your HIIT business the Imagine Strength edge. Be part of the HIIT revolution and see firsthand how their unique equipment can transform your studio's workout experience. Elevate your HIIT business with Imagine Strength.
Let's go.